The way that we present the information that we want to send out to teams, like construction teams, to stage teams, to anybody that you want to sort of present your ideas or your drawings to. The way that we do this is we create sheet layers. And sheet layers are basically sheets of paper that you put views that you want to of your objects, of your plans, of where your set is, of your light plot, where your speakers are, whatever you want to do with your construction elements for your construction teams. You place these in a legible fashion. Sheet layer. There are a few ways of creating a sheet layer. The easiest I've found is to put yourself into the view you want of your object. So I'm going to start with this front elevation here, this front on. I'm going to go to my where my view is here because I'm in this flyover. But in this plane reference here, I'm going to go to front, and that gives me my front. Don't worry about sort of reddy pink. Where here, that's just telling me about working planes and things like that, which you don't need to worry about. That won't end up in your viewport, so don't worry about that. The reference point in your design layer. When you're in front with this, what you can do is if you go to View on the top toolbar and go Create Viewport. If I click Create Viewport, it brings up what looks like quite a complex dialog box. A lot of this you probably won't need to worry about, or deeper functions. So if you're just trying to sort of quickly create some nice things, you don't need to worry about that too much. The first thing we want to do is create a new sheet layer on this. So we're creating the view of this set here of the front of the flat onto a sheet layer. And we don't have any sheet layers made because we just haven't made them yet. And you can make them from here. So where it says create on layer, if I click down, I can click on new sheet layer if I want to create a new sheet. If I click this now, it brings up yet another dialog box. You'll be happy with it. No. The sheet number will automatically numerically roll up. So the more sheets you create, you can define what they are if you want to give it a particular designation. I tend to keep it as that sheet number as it rolls up. And the sheet title is what this will be called. So I'm going to call this one Arch Flat. And that will be the title of this sheet. And that means that when you're looking in your organization, you'll look at different sheet layers. If it just says sheet title everywhere, you're not going to know what it is. So whatever you're putting on that sheet, use a name for it, whatever makes sense to you. I'm going to hit OK on that. Now, automatically by default clicked is the use drawing label. And a drawing label will create a nice sort of information readout with that viewport. So it will tell you a drawing title, and a drawing number, and also the scale. And that's handy if you have, as we're about to do, putting multiple viewports on one sheet, because you can tell it what that view is, and if it's a different scale, it will tell you the scale on that. If you're creating an overall plan, it's just one viewport, you can turn this off by unclicking. But for our purpose, we're going to keep this on. Again, this drawing number will automatically roll up the more we add to that viewport. And the drawing title, again, very important. And highlight this. I'm going to say front elevation. And that's going to define, it's going to, on the drawing label, tell me what drawing is. The next thing we want to check is scale. So in the sheet here, it said everything needs to be 1 to 25 somewhere, I promise. It says 1 to 25 somewhere. It's always doing 1 to 25. Ah, yes, scale. The scale to be used in all exercises is 1 to 25. See, I can read. I'm going to change the scale here back in Vectorworks. 5. I'm going to leave the detail level to medium. If you have lots of curved surfaces, sometimes you'll want to put the detail, I'm going to click down here, to high, and that'll just draw nicer curves, so it won't look as edgy. Sort of like snipped. So if you're finding that your nice curves in all of your drawings are looking really quite liney and quite jaggedy, make sure your detail levels are high. For our purposes, medium's fine. The next thing you're going to want to do is look at the display settings here. Because this is in 3D, it's turned the background render to shaded, and that's what gives it that. That's what gives it that lovely white sort of texture to it. Because we're wanting to create this sort of line drawing, what we want to actually do when we go back here is in display settings in the background render, turn this to wireframe. And what that will do is it'll make it look like a line drawing rather than sort of beautiful shaded drawing. When we go to do the isometric, turn this to shaded, that you can see the nice shading on it. Now I'm going to hit OK. And what's this done? If you look up to your layers and classes on the toolbar up here, now saying you're in sheet 1 and arch flat. And that is our viewport. So it says this is your drawing label, number 1, front elevation scale 1 to 25. What I can do here I can center this up where I want it on the drawing. And this border here, you can see on the outside, this is our A3 paper that we set up in the page setup. So if this looks stupidly small, you might want to go check your page setup, file, and page setup. But this is A3. And now we have the first part of the third angle projection. The next thing we're going to do is we'll do this side elevation here, which will be the right side. If I jump back to Vectorworks, I want to go back to my design layer to be able to see the model again. So if I go up to layers and classes, click down on that and go set, and that will take me back to my design layer with my object. I'm going to go to view here, and rather than front, I'm going to say right, and that gives us this right view here. And again, I'm going to go to view and create viewport. Simple. Because we already created a sheet, it says sheet 1 for the layer, which is great. The arch flat, that's where I want it to be. It will always default to the last sheet that you created in this. So just be aware that if you're creating multiple different sheets or different pieces of set, you want to keep an eye on this. Again, default to numerically up the sequence into 2. And the drawing title here, it's just gone back to drawing title, but I want to call this side elevation. Again, check my scale is 1 to 25, otherwise it won't look really great when it goes in. And I want to check to make sure my background is wireframe. And I'm going to hit OK. And then you can see here that side elevation has come in. I can then click, hold and drag this around, and I want to line it up. So I'm going to just click, basically I'm choosing this edge here, click and dragging, and then it'll snap to this so that the bottom edges align effectively. And then I'm going to click and hold. I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm dragging out. And what the shift key does is it locks to that plane. So locks to that plane, locks to the axis even. So at the moment I can move around. If I press the shift key, basically it locks me to that, or it locks me to 45 or an angle. So it's a nice way by pressing and holding shift to be able to move these around. Hopefully that makes sense. So we have a side elevation here, and I'm going to put in a nice top view. So again, going up to my layer box, jumping down to my set line layer, changing my view here, plan. That's already in wireframe, which is great. Go to view, create viewport. And now, I want to be on sheet 1. Drawing number is going to be 3. The drawing title, I want to say top plan. Scale again, 1 to 25, so it matches the other. And because this is in top plan view in the design layer, it's automatically gone to wireframe, which is great. I'm going to hit OK. And again, and the center of the drawing, and click. I'm going to hold down my shift key. And I can create that. Now I have my front elevation, side elevation, top plan, which matches my third angle projection here. Obviously, the distances are slightly different because I've got my drawing labels, which the other one doesn't. I could change this, so I can move these. I could move this label around, that label around if I wanted to. If you want to, I'll show you quickly how to do that. If you make sure that the viewport, this viewport here, again, you've got an object information palette for this viewport. Make sure that the viewport is highlighted in orange and right click. And in it, I can edit annotations. There's a couple of options. There's edit crop and edit annotations. Edit crop means that I could crop certain things out. Edit annotations means that when I jump in, I can move any annotations attached to this design, this viewport. Now I could click on this and I can move it there. And I can exit this viewport. But then click on plan, make sure it's highlighted, right click, edit annotations. And again, holding down the shift key so that it moves, it locks to the axis I'm moving it in. Exit viewport. And I have moved these drawing labels to be out of the way enough. I could then, again, holding down the shift key and dragging, I can start to holding down the shift key and dragging. You'll see there that snap, when I get close to this point, it snaps in. If you want to zoom in a little bit, if you want to keep it a bit further away. And I can create there. Right click on this. Edit annotations. Actually put this more to the center. Looks don't like that either. You can play around to your heart's content. And there we have a third angle. Presented, a third angle projection presented like we have in the technical drawing, which is great. One thing you can do just before we go into creating sheet borders and title blocks so that it looks all very professional is you can add dimensions onto this using the dimension tool. And the dimension tool is this in the basic tool set and tends to be the constrained linear dimension tool just there. Now, Be wary of this. If I were to click on the dimension tool now, if I go from there to there, you would expect this to be 3 meters or 3,000 millimeters on the dimension. It's not. It's not, because this is scaling to the size of an A3 sheet, not to the actual size that this object is. So if I were to print this out, that would be 120 millimeters from there to there on the sheet, because it is relative to the size of the A3 sheet, not to the size of the object in this viewport. I'm going to press the delete key to get rid of that. I'm going to press the X key so that I'm not in the measurement to the dimension tool anymore. Now, in order to get your scaling correct for your dimension, what you want to do is go into edit the annotation of your viewport by right-clicking this, edit annotations, and now I do the same thing again. I go over to my basic tool set here, click on dimension tool, do the same here. Now I click 3 meters because I'm in the right tool. I can put this dimension in here, there. I could add these dimensions in if I wanted to. I could do that. 603, that's because it's going to the outside of that. Oops, daisy. That's what you want to watch, is you want to watch where you end up on this point. So because this is such a small distance, it's automatically snapping to the outside. So the radius on that you want the actual aperture to be is 600. But I knew that was wrong. So I click on this, click on the center of the arch, and then click on this midpoint on the inside here. There we are. Again, you want to make sure that you are actually measuring the bits that you want to measure. So I could do that. Just that. Now that's not very legible. It's not the best thing I've ever done in the world. That gives you the idea, dimensions that you can put on this. A little bit scrappy. I would probably actually not do as much of that or duplicate it out so that you could tell what lines. So, however, what you could do to make that a little bit more legible is actually change the color of these lines. If I select all of these dimensions here, holding shift, if I go to the attributes panel that I moved here, in the pen, where it's black at the moment, if I click here in that black color, and I go to custom or classic Vectorworks colors, so in this drop down here, I could make these blue, and then if I press escape and X a couple of times, that makes that a bit more legible. Again, this is personal preference. Figure out what works for you and what works for other people. Little hint though, if I wanted to show this dimension here, I could draw it here because the scales are the same. So it would scale correctly. However, if I moved this viewport around, it would move that dimension there. So only measure on the objects within the viewport you're currently annotating. Otherwise, it would go a bit weird. Change this one to blue as well, don't I? Keep it all the same. Boom. I hit exit viewport annotation now. Put that there. And let's say I wanted to note the widths of the thicknesses of the flaps and the return. Right clicking here, edit annotation on this viewport, Go to my tool here. Hundred. I can move this text around. So clicking on the text and dragging, I've been able to move anything. That might make things a little bit more legible. And again, I can highlight both of these dimensions. Go up to my attributes. Go in here. Use the color. Very pretty. And then I have some nice dimensions in there. Exit viewport there. Right click. Go into my annotation. And I'm going to move this over here as well. So that makes that look a bit more legible. Again, personal preference. What works for you might not work for other people, and vice versa. There are standards that you could look up. And there are also lots and lots of tutorials about it online. That is adding dimensions and your sheet layers. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at creating a title block and a title border that will frame the sheet and tell you what it is. But first, before we do that, the one thing I forgot was a right isometric or a left isometric of this. Give it some, give a reference of a 3D object, much like this here. I'll do that, and then we'll look at making the border print. In order to create the other viewport, the last viewport, I'm going to go up into my layers, make the design layer my layer, and in here, views, I'm going to do right isometric. What do I want to do? I want to do left isometric because that will match this here. Again, in left isometric, so I can just go View, Create Viewport. On the right layer, Sheet 1, drawing labels, moving up, I'm going to right click this and I'm going to call it left isometric. That's what it is. Make sure the scale is 1 to 25. Now with the isometrics, the sort of 3D views tends to be a reference to give you an idea of what the object looks like in 3D. You can make this a smaller scale, put it in the top corner because it's not as relevant perhaps for construction drawings. It depends what the purpose is. If it's for rendering to show like scenic outputs, you put beautiful texture over this object, you might want to make it bigger. That might be what this is for, but it really depends on what you're doing with it. I am going to keep the background renderer shaded because I want it to look, I want it to look like this. I want it to give that reference with all this shading, light and dark. I'm going to hit OK. And then what I have here is a nice left isometric. I'm going to bring this over to the side, just here. Now the red box basically means that it is waiting to update. So it knows that there's been changes. You created this viewport and it wants to apply the changes in the viewport. This will only happen in shaded or like a rendering mode because it's looking to figure out what it is. Once you update it, if you click on the viewport, just here, you'll see there's an update in the object info palette. I press update now. Because it's not texture heavy, there's not a lot of lighting information for like really fancy rendering, like architectural renderings. That was really quick. Depending on the settings of this, it could be really, really slow. If I went back and I made any changes to this drawing in the design layer, this would come up with the red box again, and you would need to update it. A quick way, if you've got lots of these in, a quick way of updating them all is to go to View, Update All Viewports just there, and it will update anything that's got a red across it on any of your sheet layers. Beware that if you've got a lot of heavy textures and special rendering things on it, if you've been really fancy and you've watched loads of extra videos and you do update all, it may take an age. So just be careful doing update all. It depends on So that's all of our nice views. Again, you don't need to put all of those dimensions on there. That was just me playing around and showing you what the dimensions do. You may want to make it less cluttered. Up to you. Right, the next thing we're going to do is make this, put in the sheet border and sheet title, make this look professional.